Okay, today I'm going to talk to you about biodiversity and two particular things that humans do that can impact biodiversity. So first of all, we need to know what biodiversity means. So it basically means variety of organisms in an ecosystem. Organisms means living things. So if there's a high biodiversity, it just means there's a large variety of different living things within an ecosystem. So the two things that we're going to look at that can basically negatively impact biodiversity are fish farming and non-indigenous species. Indigenous species. So both of these things are things that people do that can reduce biodiversity, which is a bad thing. So essentially, we're going to start with fish farming. So fish farming is basically where people make nets. They have nets in open water, like in a lake or in the sea, and they have the fish within these nets. So the water's all around, obviously, but the fish cannot get out through the holes in the net. So all of your fish are in here. It makes it easier to catch the fish. It makes it easier to feed the fish. And so this is why people do fish farming. However, it can have a negative effect on biodiversity. And here are the reasons why. Basically, as the fish farmers add the food in, some of the food is not eaten and it goes to waste. Also, these fish are producing waste as well. Both of these things can lead to something called eutrophication. Now, eutrophication basically causes algae to grow over the surface of the water and can reduce biodiversity. You can watch another video about eutrophication on this channel. So eutrophication is one of the negative impacts caused by the waste and caused by the food from fish farming. Another negative impact is our parasites and disease. So remember, these fish, even though they're within the net, parasites that are on the fish can escape and infect other organisms that are in the water. So fish farming could be have another negative impact on the biodiversity, because these parasites could end up damaging and affecting the numbers of other organisms. The final problem is this: trapped predators. So remember, even though there are these nets, outside of the nets is open water. So predators such as sea lions can come along and try to catch the fish and actually get entangled and die within the nets. So again, that is going to affect the biodiversity. That's going to decrease the biodiversity by killing certain predators. So that is basically the negative impacts of fish farming. The other thing that we're going to look at that negatively impacts biodiversity is non-indigenous species. The example I'm going to use is by looking at crayfish. So this here is the UK crayfish, and this here is the bigger one, is called the signal crayfish. So essentially, in the UK, we used to have this type of crayfish here. Now, what happened is the signal crayfish was introduced to the UK. It was actually from America, in order to kind of boost the food source. So people would have these nice big crayfish to eat. So they're introduced to river systems across the UK. So the difference between indigenous and non-indigenous: indigenous means that organism is originally from that particular area. So in this context, the UK crayfish was the indigenous one. It was originally from the area. The non-indigenous organism is the one that has been introduced. In this particular context, it's the signal crayfish. Now, with the introduction of a non-indigenous species comes three main negative impacts. First of all, competition for resources. If we have two different organisms that are both competing for the same resource, for example food, one might outcompete the other, meaning reduction in the population of one of the species. So that's one impact that the signal crayfish had. Another is predation. So the signal crayfish could prey on different organisms and cause those numbers to decrease, their populations to decrease, again reducing biodiversity. Now the final one is the signal crayfish could bring disease. So this introduced species could bring disease along with them that could end up wiping out or reducing the numbers of other organisms. So this is how non-indigenous species can decrease the biodiversity. Thank you.